welcome to Dear Katie, the podcast that amplifies courageous voices and real stories of resilience, healing, and hope after trauma. Inspired by the many letters Katie has received over the last 20 years, each week she interviews survivors, healers, and experts to honor their stories and explore the many paths to healing and hope. Before we begin, please know, many episodes of Dear Katie cover sensitive topics related to sexual violence, trauma, and recovery. Listen with care and take the space you need to take care of yourself. Your well-being is what matters most. Now, let's join Katie and today's guest for a conversation that matters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Dear Katie podcast. As you know, this is a journey that we are all taking together, survivors and supporters alike, in figuring out the ways in which, the modalities in which we can use to find that power, that strength, regrouping, rebranding our own vision of ourselves if needed, and all the other good things that can come from the terribleness of abuse, violence, and sexual misconduct. So I always remind our listeners, please take excellent good care of yourself. Push pause at any time. I say, get some fresh air. I know you've heard me mention chocolate a million times. It's kind of my little tiny favorite thing to try if I get in a bad mood. There's so many cool varieties of chocolate, I feel like. But whatever works for you. And I think you're going to enjoy our special guest today. So let me tell you a little bit about Sydney. So Sydney Searchwell-Simpson is a writer, artist, yogi, permaculture practitioner, and lover of life. His work and embodied life merges spirituality and social action. Inspired by her own insights on her spiritual journey, her experience of sexual and domestic violence, and a lifetime of activism, Sydney's upcoming books and podcasts explore how we can love and be free through and beyond what she calls domination consciousness. She walks a path of the heart and is intentionally exploring how she can live, build, love, and create new ways of being and relating that are conducive for all of us and to life. So my goodness, Sydney, that is like the most aspirational intro I think I've ever read. So it's really exciting to meet you. I feel like you should have a glowing aura around you now of like positivity. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Katie. Yeah, I was like, here's the truth.
No, it's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely positive. So I guess we start with kind of where you began as a survivor yourself. So I know I just learned you're in outside of Toronto. Did you grow up in Canada?
Yes, exactly. I was born and raised here. And it's interesting because my story is intertwined with my mother's story in the sense of I was first exposed to domestic violence when I was a kid. My mom's partner was abusive in so many different ways, financially, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I grew up seeing those relationship dynamics and not exactly knowing how to make sense of them. And so that began when I was around 8 years old, and it continued until I was 16. And so, witnessing that, like watching my mom go through those experiences, witnessing how it impacted my own body, my relationship with her, and that gave me really powerful context with what I was witnessing within the larger world. When I think about when I was in school and I was learning about the movements for liberation that women were going through in the 60s and on. And then when I was also learning about the movements for the liberation of Black folks that have been happening for generations, something in me clicked when I was younger where I was like, I'm so inspired by these movements to change laws and to change mindsets. But at the same time, I don't know if laws are going to change what's happening within my household. And that became a really powerful foundation for me to see and to witness. There was something deeper that laws could not necessarily change, and that it would actually, in order for us to move forward in building a world of freedom, it would require changing how we relate to each other one-on-one. And so that gave me really powerful context and a foundation that allows me to walk forward now on this path of healing for myself and for everyone.
Yeah, I love how you were able to see all the connective tissue between marginalized and discriminated peoples. And Sydney, that's definitely been I feel like I did that personally in the United States as I would go from town to town and city to city and community to community, because you meet people from all walks of life in all different types of living circumstances with all different levels of, even, from wealth to poverty to, every faith background. And what's a universal truth is that sexual violence knows no limits, no boundaries. And yet, those of us who've been through it know the hurt and the pain that comes from it. And that experience, while unique to each person, I think there's so many common threads, which is hence the podcast. Like, we all find little pieces, no matter who's listening, and we have folks in all over the world listening. So, so you do all this great work, and you're only like what, 16 to 18? 16?
No, I'm 27.
Okay, so when this epiphany, it sounds like it was going on when you were, 18, 19, 20.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, I feel like, has just been unfolding throughout my whole life. I would say things really clicked. Honestly, maybe during actually my own recovery from from sexual violence, because then that experience occurred with an intimate partner.
Okay. And was that one, was it one person multiple times, or was it?
Yeah, it was one person, one time.
Okay.
And my previous partner at that time was going through drug-induced psychosis from that was triggered by his own experience of sexual violence as a kid. And so to go through that, I was 20, this was 20, end of 2019. So I was about 2021. And I could feel and see sort of like the complex layers of myself being a victim of sexual violence, and the pain that my partner at the time, had acted upon. And that whole experience of healing ultimately that's what led to that catalyst, that like immense understanding of this person that caused immense harm to me. Like, something has been ruptured in our relationship. And that happens, I think, with everyone who experiences sexual violence, whether or not they know the person who caused them violence or had a relationship with them personally. There's been a rupture in our relationship. And my focus was, how do I now begin to repair the lines within me that have been cut and violated and are now tangled? And if I so desire, how do I also repair that relationship between myself and my previous partner? And so that became where it's a larger relational issue, sexual violence, and it's impacting, like you said, people all around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So going back to that intimate partner violence, can you talk a little bit about what happened, just so some of our listeners who are learning from you might say, "Oh, that's so close to what happened to me."
Yeah, completely. Where to begin? I think the story really begins. My previous partner, who I was with, we were in a long distance relationship, and we were preparing for his visit, a Christmas visit, to come meet my family. We had been separated for months at this time. It was a very, very exciting time. And about 2 months out of that trip occurring, was when he began to experience his first psychosis episode. And this was troubling for so many different reasons. And long story short, essentially, about a week or so away from the initial travel date when he was supposed to arrive in Canada, we got the okay from his parents and his families and the doctors, like, he's okay, he's recovering, everything's good. And so the first week, everything seemed to be a-okay with his mental health, and there was, less discussion about what was going on. There was a lot of avoidance. And then one day, we had both consumed weed. And that triggered his psychosis once again. And this was like a huge thing that I did not know how to deal with in person. And we brought him to the hospital, and things seemed to be a-okay. The doctor was like, he's fine. Like, he just need, like, you just give him his meds and everything should be okay. And we went to the place I was staying at the time in Kingston, and multiple events happened throughout that week, different episode occurrences, whatnot. And ultimately, on the night before he was supposed to leave, he had just assaulted me in my sleep. And it was shattering. I was completely shattered beyond understanding. I remember my body just like freezing because I was like, I didn't understand what was going on after the almost 2 weeks of chaos of the psychotic episodes and not knowing how to deal with it and having to call the police and finding out that he had left his medication, in his home country and didn't let me know that he was on medication. All of that just sort of exploded and through that event. And I just completely shut down. And it's interesting because when I reflect on that experience, and even just sharing the story now, I held a lot of shame about the story. I held a lot of shame. I didn't want to share what had happened because, in all honesty, I was afraid that people were going to judge him and people were going to judge me. And so there were people who were in my life at that time who don't know that this happened to me because I was like, it's okay. I'm just going to deal with it myself and just try to make project ultimately a clean image that everything was okay when everything was actually falling apart. So yeah, that was my experience.
Wow, Sydney. And also, just for one last question, so you had known this man guy prior to the visit, and how did you originally meet? Because it sounds like you're in two different countries.
Yeah, well, I had spent a year abroad in France, and then I spent a summer in Spain, which is where we met. And so we had a lovely summer. It was a beautiful summer, beautiful experience. And yeah, we were like, okay, we'll continue this relationship and see where. Yeah,
That's so hard. And in that summer, his issues with the psychosis hadn't started or weren't apparent.
no, it was such
Gosh.
a drastic shift from the very first half of our relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds really frightening, Sydney, in so many ways, because especially when you think you know someone, you start to doubt. I can only imagine you would doubt your own judgment. Like, what is wrong with me that I didn't see this? But my goodness, it's certainly not your fault. But it looks like you took that next experience, and then your work is so fascinating. So how soon after recovery did you start doing all these other things? And did you have a job at the time that this happened? Like, what were you doing with your
I
own?
was a student.
You were still a student
I was a student.
in college.
Yeah, I was in my final year of university. And then not only that, but it was the beginning of the pandemic when all of this was unfolding. So in many ways, like what ultimately happened was the work that I do now is based on the practices that I learned and applied to myself to access healing. And it was almost a bit of a blessing, that time because everything shut down. Couldn't find a job. I finished school. I had gone through this massive traumatic event, which actually was a catalyst that made me realize, oh, Sydney, like you got to also heal from the trauma of your childhood. And so, yeah, it was having that complete space just to really, really connect with my body again, to connect with creating safety in my body again. I was just constantly stressed and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I didn't feel safe around men. I didn't feel safe within myself. And also all that shame was sitting on my expression as well. And so, yeah, it was the practices of yoga and meditation and a whole hell of a lot of journaling. I had to connect to my story at the end of the day, and also claim that it was my story to tell. And that was also a very vulnerable process, because someone whom I had loved, had such a powerful, dear love with, his story was also a part of it. And so to really be like, but this is my experience and this is what I'm making from that experience, was very critical. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you did great. You did wonderfully. And so now, I mean, I guess that's the blessing of COVID, is it gives us pause and it does give us space. Obviously, it caused loss of life for many different families, but it feels like you used it really well, and it was almost like you could do an entire deep dive for an extended period into probably lots of modalities from your bio and your experience. So let's talk about your knowledge journey and how you said you kept applying it to yourself. So you're like the doctor and the patient all at once. So how does that work? And what do you have an order that you went in? Like, was it just random? Was it like, oh, this one sounds really interesting, I'm going to try this one first? Or did you stack them? Like, what does it look like?
A lot of it was very like intuitively guided. I think the power of meditation, which is something I've been practicing for years, at this point, the power of meditation is that it really connects you with like your intuition. And I'll also say I felt very, very supported by my ancestors and the women before me who have experienced similar forms of violence on a collective level and on an individual level. So their support and their presence, I have no doubt, was also guiding me and understanding this is what it is that you need to heal. I would say yoga asanas was the first. I have a dear beloved teacher, Dr. Chelsea Jackson Roberts, who was so critical in helping me understand yoga asanas, the physical postures, as a way to really, really connect with my body and to sort of find wholeness within. And so I did that I still do it like sometimes twice a day, because the medicine for itself, it really does. And then I had a dream. This is actually a very important part of the story. I'm amazed that this didn't come up, but I had a dream around a month after the sexual violence episode. And it was 3 nights in a row. And at that point, I had completely stopped dreaming. And in this dream, I didn't see anything. It was just blackness, but I felt a very loving presence. And as I mentioned before, I wasn't sharing with anyone in my life what had happened because there was so much shame. But when I was with this loving presence in the dream world, I just spilt forth everything that I wasn't saying in real life. And I could feel their own guidance and wisdom being poured back into me. I can't say what they said specifically because I don't have any conscious memory of it. But that happened for 3 nights. And on the third and final night when I woke up, that was when I was like, okay, it's time to heal. And so connecting to dreams have always had a very important space within my own life, but that's something else. But yeah, it was like yoga. And then when I dived into the heart of yoga, which is meditation, which is union with self, true self beyond all identities, self beyond all experiences of pain and trauma, but just this essence of self, is really when that modality of healing and my own path transformed. And I got really curious about the body. I got very curious about how trauma is stored in the body, how we can access not even just our own personal experiences of trauma in the body, but the experiences of the trauma that our ancestors experienced through like epigenetics. So that, in some ways, life just really wove me and sort of directed me quite magically to uncovering not even just modalities of healing, but also a worldview of healing that came to really look at how traumas, whether it's sexual violence, domestic violence, colonization, any trauma, collective or individual, ultimately disconnects us from ourself. And the true path of healing is reconnecting with that self, and reconnecting with one another.
Wow. And okay, let me ask you a couple more questions about all of that.
Yes.
So the dreams, and then the connection to self. I think when you talk about the disconnection from self and then the reconnection, here's a couple of things I'm thinking, Sydney.
Mhm.
One is, I think I hear from a lot of survivors, and we've talked about it on the show, is like you felt like you feel like you lose your old self, and now you're this new victim self. And you are sort of describing there was always this past self that was feeling, all these different types of discrimination, trauma. And then you decided to go into a deeper self. So I think that's really fascinating because it speaks to like how we cognize what we think our self is. And when do we lose it? When do we regain it? When do we open another part of it? When you think about death and dying, and if somebody you care very much about passes, then are you another new self, right? Then you have a deeper understanding of loss and grieving. So let me hear more about like what it meant to find your inner self, your real self, your true self. Like, what did that look like? And how hard does it? It sounds really hard. Was it kinesthetic, bodily? Was it a mental? Was it all like? Was it a daily thing? Was it a journal? Like,
Honestly, it was everything. Yeah, I think I love what you said about the fact that you do lose a part of yourself when you experience trauma of any sorts. And I remember feeling like very upset at myself. And it's interesting because the first part of my healing process, there was a lot of me trying to go back to that point where I was like, I just need to get back to a point where I won't be constantly triggered at the sight of this or the smell of this, or so then I could, like, it was really me not accepting, like that's one of the first steps of moving through grief is accepting that something happened. I was trying so hard to go back to a point where something didn't happen, but there was a moment that made me realize where I had to ultimately like go into the forest and scream, because I was like, you need to access your rage. It's sitting inside you. You need to just scream and accept that this has happened. That made me realize, okay, there's no going back. I will spend the rest of my life grieving at the fact that there's no me before sexual violence anymore. And now the pen's in my hands. Like, who do I want to be? How am I going to let this experience transform and inform me? And in some way that allowed me to take my power back in a situation that felt so powerless. And so it was just a holistic process. Like, I really feel like when I started to heal both from the sexual violence and the domestic violence as a kid, and for context, the abuser of my family was like constantly belittling our worth. He also had very violent white supremacist ideas and spewed a lot of hatred at our family. And so I had to really it began with just like coming to see myself, like I am worthy, like I am whole, I have value, things like that. And not just thinking it in affirmations, but actually embodying that in like the decisions that I made in my life for me. But then through the practices of yoga and meditation, through kirtan, through how my intuition was expanding through those practices, through how even my intuition was expanding because I was accessing the trauma stored in my body, which wasn't blocking that intuitive wisdom. And that really got me to understand, wait, there's something deeper here. There's a self that, there's a self that is beyond identity. There's a soul. and there's a soul that's, you know, that animates this body, and this soul is whole. And I also, in my own personal life, I really believe, especially considering how my life has unfolded and continues to unfold through the experiences of my childhood and that experience of sexual violence, that those experiences were very integral for whatever it is that my soul came here to do on this earth, to serve on this earth. And so coming to connect with what existed beyond all I was told about who Sydney is and who Sydney has to be in relationship to whomever, and dropping into the pure essence of who I am. It came from that. It came from connecting to the earth and listening to the silence in myself that existed when I was with the earth. I wasn't thinking about, oh, you have to be XYZ. I was just existing. I was just being. And that wasn't tied to my race. That wasn't tied to my gender. That wasn't tied to anything about me. It was just tied to my existence.
And when you were going through and doing all these reflections and exercises, I'm curious, you know, I'm envisioning you in the forest by yourself, but did you have any human support around you, or family or friends, or was it kind of your own? I know it was COVID, so you didn't see a lot of humans probably, but that didn't last forever. And now it's, 2025. So how did the real world human life help or hinder what you were going through?
I mean, the human life became the most important of practice. And that's where I think we come into really understanding like liberation, because I think that there's this misunderstanding in spirituality that the like hermit, you just like, you disappear into the mountains and you exist in your self-realization. But I think that real change occurs and real points of practice occurs when you're in the human to human world. So very, again, very magically, like when I think of how life orchestrated so much of this, the things I was doing for, at that point, 2 years, thinking about somatically how we heal, thinking about how our traumas disconnect us from the very truth of who we are, and how healing is connected to that. I was able to work a wonderful job with Rev. Angel Kyoto Williams at their organization, Transformative Change. And she is a Zen Buddhist who does a lot of work around racial justice and connecting people with liberation. And so that was really a wonderful step in me expanding community, I could engage in not even just ideas, but engage more deeply with what it was I was experiencing. And at the time, during that healing process, after I graduated from university, I moved in with my sister and my brother. And that's when we were doing a lot of embodied practice of this is how it is that we move forward as a family. And so they were all the community I met there with Transformative Change, my family, my friends who were also going through their own healing and their own accessing of like this juicy spiritual moment that we're living in, that we're alive in, that's calling for change. Those who were awakening too, like we really found each other. And I'm happy that you mentioned that too, because I really began very isolated. And I think that was a necessary part of my process. But now the healing can only go so far in an isolated context. Healing really has to happen relationally. If the harm happens in a relational context, the healing also has to happen within a relational context as well.
Nice. I'm glad you answered that question, Sydney. I think that's really helpful, and it gives me a better picture of exactly what you were going through too. And so the yoga was the first, the Zen Buddhism and the other, like tell me, because your list is long of all the things you've done. What was another like really like breakthrough? Did you feel like it was a steady pace of like, I'm doing this and this and this? Or did you feel like, oh my gosh, that was another big leap up a mountainside? Were there big steps or was it more gradual?
That's a good question. I feel like it was gradual, and a lot of them sort of like pooled into each other. And yeah, like I really think now that I look back, because it's only been around 7 years, but it feels like a whole lifetime that has happened in one section. But yeah, things just sort of pulled into each other. And at the time I was trying to experiment. I mean, because I was experiencing the healing that I was getting from yoga and meditation and this deep connection with the earth, I was like so excited. I'm like, hey, everyone, like, listen, like, look at all these great things that we could, be really, really paying attention to and exploring and engaging with together. And I was trying to put this all into one thing. I spent a lot of years trying to cram spirituality and activism and permaculture all into one thing. And then I sort of just only more recently realized, like, Sydney, they're united within you. Like, you don't have to follow a very fixed path. You can sort of explore where your heart leads and what you're curious about, and just sort of like see what happens. And that has made this journey so much more fun, so much more playful too. And I also think that that's an incredibly important aspect for all people to connect with, but especially survivors of sexual violence, to become familiar again with play and discovery. And that comes from being able to feel safe with life, being able to feel safe in your body. So yeah, very, very gradual.
Okay, that's interesting as well, Sydney. Thank you for sharing that too. So I guess now, and I guess I want to go back to the brother and sister. So obviously they were trying to heal from the childhood experience alongside you, correct?
Yeah, in their own ways. I think when we moved in together during the pandemic, it was also in the same household that all the abuse occurred in. And
oh gosh, that must have been so hard.
well, I had a lot of resistance. You have no idea. I had so much
I
resistance.
can't believe it. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like you needed to repaint all the walls, hang up entirely, like change the lighting, knock out some walls. Like I mean, that's how serious I got in I would rearrange. So Cindy, here's a weird little fun fact.
Yeah,
Because when I was starting at 18, I would go, my way of healing was basically live as a nomad, go from town to town, live in a hotel or in some RA's room for one night, and then go on and do it again and do it again and do it again and share and share and share and learn from, all these speeches. But I never wanted to mess up the RA's room, the resident advisor. But if I was in the hotel, I was moving the furniture around. Like, I'm not, like, the bed is not going near the wall. I'm pulling things away. It's just like, I feel very strongly about space and, chi or whatever that is. And like, I think it really, it sits with your head space, especially if you're trying to like sleep or regroup. And it's really hard for, I think, some of us who are especially visually oriented to shut out the nightmares and flashbacks and like the physical surroundings. Like, even if you close your eyes, you can instantly know how big the room is and you've just seen it. You know what I mean?
I know completely.
Yeah, it's so weird. And I think a lot of non-survivors don't know what that feels like as well. But that's why I was like, oh my gosh, in the same room, same house. That's like double whammy. I can't believe it worked.
I have so much faith and appreciation and gratitude for the grace of life, because all of that happened. I resisted because I was like, I'm going to be unsafe. This is just so uncomfortable. I don't want to do this, but I had to. Like, something in me was compelling me to move forward. And so, along with like the trauma that my family and I inherited, we also inherited relationship dynamics because of that trauma. And I feel really blessed and grateful for those 3 years that we had lived together. they were hard. Like, there was no doubt on the planet they were hard. There was a lot of arguing. There was a lot of just trying to unravel what we had experienced as children and how it was showing up now as grown adults. But because of our willingness to work through that, and I think also because of my own individual healing, we helped create a space where now there's like a lot of love, a lot of understanding, a lot of connection, just a lot of freedom in my family. And that is something that I have so much gratitude for, because if I chose to just move and push away from that, which I had good reason to, I don't think I would be sitting here today with the kind of love and support that has been cultivated in that space.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super impressed and proud of you. And I think just knowing that you did it is going to encourage some of our listeners to know that they can find a way as well. I think one of the terms I wanted to focus in on is the one I mentioned at the end, the domination consciousness, and trying to unpack that. So can you talk about that? Because obviously all the forms of abuse you mentioned and trauma are pieces of domination. It's pieces of power and control. So how do you get free from those, and it's ongoing, whether it happens to us on a daily basis because someone calls us fat, somebody calls us black, somebody calls us, whatever they think is better, skin color or size or age, or like you could list almost everything, right? If somebody thinks that their particular configuration is better, they're using the domination of that and the privilege that comes from it to, hold us into a different space of self-doubt and negativity. So how does one overcome this domination consciousness?
Like with all things, it really starts from a point of awareness. You can't overcome anything until you become aware of it. And that's sort of why I'm really eager. I'm like, everyone, we have to, let's look at this, because, and I see this happening now when it comes to movements for liberation, which are so needed. I mean, our world is in turmoil, and that can't be denied. And domination consciousness, the understanding of it came from witnessing that we could get rid of we can get rid of our punitive criminal system. We can get rid of, all of the people who are, lovers of Donald Trump. We can get rid of all of these external systems of domination, but our training under them would exist within us. And if we don't begin to acknowledge the training that we have accumulated from literally generations just generations of training under systems of domination, we'll be planting those same seeds. And so that's why I think meditation is such a powerful thing, because it allows you to observe and become aware of who you think you are. Lots of people think that they are their thoughts, that they are their emotions. But if you come to observe a thought, for example, I'm going to look at judgment. Judgment is a huge component of the consciousness of domination. And what it does is it makes the person who is judging feel like they are better than. And that's the ego that's formed under domination consciousness. So if I have been taught to judge people who are fat and see that as wrong, if I have been taught to judge people who have darker skin and see that as wrong, that's the training of white supremacy. That's the training of body supremacy. And we do that not even just to other people, but we also do that to ourselves. And so it really starts from looking at, how do I try to do the same thing to other people that someone I might call an oppressor does to me? How am I trying to control people and try to fix them into boxes so then they can be limited by a limited perception or understanding of who it is that they are? And so for me, when I think about domination consciousness, it's just a point of reference. It's a point of creation. And if we evolve beyond the training of systems of domination, which has formed this consciousness, and if we evolve beyond the egos that we have all formed to survive under these systems, I think that's when we can really tap into a deeper sense of freedom, a deeper sense of who it is that we truly are at our core, because our training is no longer hijacking our relations.
Yeah, I love that. So it's exciting. I wish that there was some process that all humans could do to undo the power structures. And another thing, as you were speaking, Cindy, I was thinking about when in college, I loved taking something. I felt so fortunate because a lot of the classes, I was a chemical engineer, Japanese double major. Like I was all about science and math. But then, when this happened, I took classes about anthropology and learning about entire cultures where they were matriarchies. And even within religious systems, like there was an entire different understanding of what powerful was. That was like revisionist history, and I feel like that must feel too scary for most people, because it's easier to sell this very narrow little tiny box and try and cram into it. And if you don't fit in, oh well, you're part of the servant status.
It's interesting. Please go.
Oh, you go.
It's interesting that you say that, because one component, and this also sort of goes into permaculture too, but one component of systems of domination, specifically colonization, is that it's this sense of there is one right way. And that just speaks against the inherent truth of life that you can see within our ecosystem, where
so beautiful.
Gorgeous. Like it makes me.
I know. I love it. I mean, to me, that's the delight, is like if you go into nature and you explore all the cultures and all the species, and like it's a marvel. I mean, it's just it's so exciting. It's like the world is an art museum in and of itself. It's just I couldn't agree with you more. But I feel like it takes a willingness to step out of one's comfort zone, and unfortunately, that comfort zone is entirely man-made. Or patriarchy, or just culturally myopic, and it feels very narrow. But you are living the best life, Sydney. So how do our listeners like pull off a chunk and say, like, this is something I want to try? Where would they start? What would you
when it comes to becoming free from domination consciousness?
Yeah, where would they start?
Gosh. Let me meditate on that. I'm like going through my own practices, and then also in my book that I'll be publishing later this year, I share a lot of these practices. So I'm trying to think about what is the point? What is a really powerful beginning point? Again, I just keep being returned to self-observation. And that might not be the answer that people are like, yes, but that to me is the most powerful point for anything that you do in this world, is to know yourself and to come to know the thoughts that you have about other people, come to know the thoughts that you have about yourself, come to know the thoughts and the beliefs that you have about the world around you, around life around you, people who are different from you, and really notice that and see if you can really notice that from a place of non-judgment, not judging yourself for having those thoughts, for having those beliefs, which acknowledges the fact that you are not this, therefore you are not stuck there. If you observe that you have thoughts and beliefs that are filled with hatred, or that espouse division, or that put you higher above others, judging yourself is not going to allow you to become free from those ideas, and which is ultimately what will help other people become free too. And so I really think dropping into that self-observation and just inquiring self-inquiry is one of the most important components of yoga, inquiring, where did this thought and belief come from? Did it come from what I learned through the media? Did it come through what I learned from my family? It could have come from absolutely anywhere. And ultimately, at that point, coming back to relationships, you have to then decide how you want to be in relationship with that. Now that you have an awareness that you might have a limiting belief about women, if you're like, I don't know, a man who has a belief that women are there for your own pleasure. Where did that come from? Is it authentic to who it is that you are? And now that you have that awareness, what are you going to do with that? If you have a belief that Black people are all criminals, or that if you have a belief that you have to be better than other people in order to have any sort of sense of self-worth, really begin to not even just think, but open up to the possibility that that's all wrong. None of it is actually true. And we have to decide, once we are aware of anything, we have to decide how you want to be in relationship with it. So build up that practice of self-observation through meditation, through connecting to people who are also perhaps observing challenging thoughts, challenging beliefs, and really just come to observe who you are within in relationship to the outer world. And once you begin to change this, you'll begin to see your outer world change. That to me is the most important thing. And that meditation doesn't have to be sitting down. The goal, I think, when it comes to meditation is to be able to use every moment, this conversation with you, Katie, when I'm at work, it's all meditation, because it's all about being very present, being very aware, and being really grounded into something beyond thought. So you can do walking meditations, whatever gets you present, whatever gets you connected, whatever gets you still within yourself. Use that as the opportunity to observe, to ask questions, and build your capacity for discomfort, because you're going to face some really uncomfortable things, untruths about who it is that you are. It's going to feel like truth, but my Rev Angel says this, and it's such a powerful teaching. Like, you feel the discomfort of untruths because there's a truth within you that this doesn't resonate. So it's like, lean into the discomfort of what it is that you uncover from that self-observation. Know it's just training, and know that at the end of the day, you have choice. That's the most powerful thing. You have choice to decide how it is you want to relate to yourself, how it is you want to relate to other humans, other life beings, animals, insects, the earth. And I think that's what's really going to move us through.
Thank you. Yeah, Cindy, that is a glorious statement. And I know you've given tons of great ideas, and just your own journey is inspirational in and of itself. And so clear. Like, I think it was so helpful the way you described each part. And thank you for your generosity in sharing it with all of our listeners. And I can't wait for your book. This might be out around the same time. So hopefully this will boost interest in your book, and our listeners will go find it. So thank you for joining us, Cindy. Absolutely.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, and for our listeners, my goodness, what another, I feel so amazed by all of our guests. Each and every one, I feel, is offering another chapter, another page, even another sentence or another breath of air to each of us. So, take what you find, listen to it again if you need to, listen to it once, then come back to it in a month and listen to it again and see if you're in a different place, especially if you started that self analysis and observation and listen that Cindy described. So thank you, listeners. Together we are stronger. We are never alone in our survivorship and our healing journey. Please use the Sexual Assault Legal Hotline if you're ready to take that step in your healing journey. It is totally free, and it's on the Take Back the Night website. And otherwise, stay tuned for another episode, and be well.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Dear Katie. These conversations are never easy, but they're always necessary, and we're so grateful you chose to share this space with us. If something in today's episode stirred something within you, please give yourself what you need. Whether that's rest, support, or just a deep breath, you're not alone. To hear more stories, resources, and survivor-centered conversations, be sure to subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We want to hear from you, so please leave us a review and share your feedback. Your thoughts help us create episodes that resonate with listeners. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.